Here with us now is John Hanna. He is the Randi and Charles Wax Senior Fellow at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America's Gemunder Center for Defense and Strategy. Nice to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How significant is this? No new strikes announced overnight.
Well, I'm not sure how significant it is because all of the signals of the last week, both in terms of the president's own statements about a possible major escalation, including going after deeply buried nuclear sites, as well as military preparations and the amount of equipment and personnel that are flowing into the region, seem all to be pointing in the direction of major escalation here by the United States. So what happened yesterday or didn't happen yesterday may be just the calm before the storm. We're going to have to see.
Well, I want to bring up a headline of a piece that you recently wrote. Trump's hands are tied in Hormuz, you say. You suggest that if a military solution is not possible, America needs an alternate strategy. And you write, quote, that strategy would use aggressive diplomacy to weaponize the widespread international consensus on restoring freedom of navigation. So do you think diplomacy is still possible here?
I do think diplomacy is possible, and I think it probably hasn't been used enough. There always needs to be a full combination of all elements of American power, obviously military force, but diplomacy, economic sanctions, information operations, covert operations. All of these need to be able to flow together to achieve whatever the desired political objective is of a major campaign or war like this. So I do think there's a place for diplomacy. I do think on the issue of Hormuz, which for better or worse, opening up that strategic waterway has become the center of gravity of this entire war. And if there are limited military options that the president can accept at an acceptable cost in terms of American lives, effects on the global economy, depletion of our own weapon stocks that we need in order to be able to defend our interests in so many different parts of the world, then diplomacy and mobilizing what seems to be an international consensus, even for the Chinese, that these international waterways have to remain free and open, and they can't be told or exclusively controlled by a single power using its own military force. So I do think there's an opportunity there to do much more with diplomacy on the issue of opening Hormuz.
Right. So, again, no new strikes announced overnight from the Pentagon, but we have, that's been a very different story over the last couple of weeks, and Americans have been concerned watching this renewed military action and watching it all intensify. The president has said he does not believe China and Russia are helping Iran, but some analysts say otherwise. How concerned should we be about that?
Well, I'm deeply concerned. I mean, the president was focused on the actual selling of full weapon systems to Iran by China or Russia. But we know now that Iran has been able to access huge amounts of really precise, exquisite intelligence, mostly from satellites from space, from the Chinese, from the Russians, that are allowing them to target. And obviously, as we saw with that attack in Jordan last week, kill American personnel on the ground with really exquisite targeting for their ballistic missiles and their drones. So nobody should have any doubts here that the Chinese and Russians, whether or not they're providing full weapon systems, are definitely stoking this conflict and helping to get American soldiers killed in the Middle East.
I want to get to Iran's terror proxies in a second, but what do you think about the president? He continues to say that President Xi is a friend, and he is set to meet with him. What do you think should happen on that front?
Well, obviously, the relationship with China going forward for the rest of the 21st century is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. It's got so many facets. The United States needs to have a good coordinated ability to work with China on areas of common interest, particularly in terms of the global economy and issues like security in the Indo-Pacific. But we've got real fundamental differences between our visions of the future for what happens in the 21st century, and we've got to be able to push back and penalize and sanction the Chinese when they're immediately stepping or transgressing our interests, as they are with regards to this intelligence on helping Iran. And I think the president needs to be prepared to be a little tougher with President Xi on that.
Okay. Look, it seems like the top reason, of course, that we're in this to begin with is so that Iran doesn't have the ability to create a nuclear weapon. That's what we've heard from the war secretary and from the president repeatedly. But it's also a real problem in the region. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world, and they've got this radical ideology that they don't want to just spread there, but all over the world as well. And let's talk about what's going on with the Houthis right now. The Iran-backed Houthis actively getting involved in the fighting this week. They launched attacks on 2 Saudi oil tankers and declared a blockade on Saudi ports. Why is this Iranian proxy group getting involved now?
Well, I think they probably see some advantage here to getting involved and seeing whether or not they can get their position in Yemen recognized by the United States. They've been under a lot of pressure and embargoes by Saudi Arabia, and they're trying to break that and strengthen their own position in Yemen. So they're deciding to get involved here now. The Iranians have obviously been putting a lot of pressure on them, and this is another card in the Iranian hands, no question. There are IRGC personnel in Yemen right now helping the Houthis target Saudi ships and perhaps other international shipping through Bab el-Mandeb, and that's will be another major pressure point on the global economy that's already under a huge amount of stress.
So you see it as leverage for Iran. Okay. Also, as we look ahead this week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet with the president in our nation's capital. We're out of time, but what can we expect quickly?
They obviously want to get on the same page as much as possible for what's coming with Iran. Are we headed into a major escalation that could have blowback on Israel? Are Israeli forces going to get back involved? That'll be issue number one.
All right, John Hanna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.